Most women are taught to be desirable, but very few are taught how to be unforgettable. She doesn't beg, she doesn't explain, she doesn't soften her edges to be digestible. And yet, the man who once believed he had power over her now finds himself haunted by the taste of her absence, by the echo of her silence, by the version of himself she forced him to meet in the mirror. Because this woman didn't just flirt with his ego, she stared straight into his shadow. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." But there is a particular kind of woman who acts as the mirror, revealing the very parts of him he spent years avoiding. She does not do this loudly. She does not do this kindly. She does not even do this intentionally. She does it by simply being dark, still, mysterious. A woman who doesn't perform light to make others comfortable. And in that stillness, the man's facade begins to crack. She is the storm that enters quietly, not to destroy, but to reveal. To a man accustomed to control, she is chaos. To a man addicted to validation, she is starvation. To a man who lives on the surface, she is depth too vast to map. And the tragedy? He won't know why he's obsessed. He'll just feel the gravity of her. He'll feel it in her boundaries, sharp as glass yet never cutting. He'll feel it in her gaze, knowing, not seeking. He'll feel it in her absence, louder than the presence of anyone else. This is not the kind of woman a man dates to feel good about himself. This is the kind he meets when life wants to shake him, when the universe decides it's time he confronts his illusions of masculinity, his performative confidence, his buried wounds, his shame about needing love but fearing vulnerability. She awakens the predator in him, but not to feed it, no, to tame it, to reveal it, to reflect it back with unapologetic feminine clarity. He sees in her what he cannot yet name, the sacred feminine that doesn't chase, doesn't submit, and doesn't collapse just to make him feel bigger. And the more he tries to decode her, the more lost he becomes in her mythology. Because this woman isn't a puzzle, she's a mirror, and what he sees depends entirely on who he is when he looks at her. Some men will try to possess her, to break her magic with routine, promises, performance. But she cannot be caught, not because she runs, but because she chooses. She chooses from clarity, not compulsion. She chooses from alignment, not fear. She chooses not from loneliness, but from deep, holy solitude. The men who meet her often do so at a crossroads in their own evolution, when their polished masks no longer fit, when their superficial wins start to feel empty, when their soul begins to whisper, "There's more," and she, this woman who knows her darkness, is the fire they must walk through. But make no mistake, she doesn't burn them. They burn in the friction of meeting her without truly knowing themselves. They burn in the heat of her mystery, her detachment, her ability to see through them, not at them. And still, they crave her. Not because she offers comfort, but because she awakens a part of them long buried beneath performance and pride. She is not a woman you win. She is a woman who reminds you that parts of you are still in shadow. He begins to spiral, not outward, but inward. Because being near her is not a chase for conquest. It is a confrontation with his own reflection. The woman who walks in her dark feminine doesn't need to seduce with her body. Her energy alone reshapes the temperature of a room. She carries the ache of ancient memory in her eyes. Memories of being burned, silenced, misunderstood. But now she has transmuted pain into poise, wounds into weapons. She does not wield them with cruelty, but with clarity. He may not understand it at first. Why her silence feels louder than any scream. Why her gaze makes him feel both exposed and seen. Why her distance ignites more fire in his chest than proximity ever did. This is the secret most men aren't ready to hear. He is not obsessed with her body. He is obsessed with who he becomes in her presence. Because she doesn't mirror his charm. She mirrors his contradictions. She doesn't coddle his wounds. She illuminates where he has refused to heal. This, Carl Jung would argue, is the role of the anima, the feminine image within the male unconscious. And when projected onto a woman who embodies her own wholeness, It evokes a crisis, not because she is cruel, but because she refuses to be the balm for a man who hasn't faced his own fire. She watches as he wrestles with himself, trying to turn her into something more manageable, more familiar, more tame. But the more he tries to reduce her into categories, the more she expands beyond them. One moment, she is soft and unbothered. The next, cold and untouchable. She does not live in his boxes of logic, and that unnerves him. She is governed by rhythm, by instinct, by the moonlight in her soul. And still, he returns, not to win her over, but to understand the ache she left in him. That ache is not desire, it is recognition of everything he denied in himself, of everything he buried just to survive. Because she is not just a woman, she is an invitation to stop performing, to feel again, to meet the boy inside the man, and to begin the real work of integration. But that work is not easy. It asks of him what most of the world never dared: to drop the armor, to feel shame without being swallowed, to hold rage without projecting, to see love not as possession, but as presence. This is where she lives, in the in-between. Not saint, not seductress, not muse, not martyr, but something deeper. She lives in the parts of a man's psyche that he never dared to navigate. And so, when she walks away, or when she simply does not stay, he doesn't just mourn the loss of her, he mourns the version of himself that she awakened, but he never fully became. And now, he's left circling his mind at night, replaying conversations, dissecting her glances, decoding her distance. But the truth is simple. She wasn't confusing. She was just clear, and he had never met a woman who didn't need to be chosen in order to feel worthy. He's used to women giving. She only reflects. He's used to women needing. She only observes. He's used to women fearing his absence. She honors hers. And that is what scorches him the most. That is what makes her unforgettable. Not her body, not her words, but the mirror she held and the silence she left behind. He may try to fill the void she left with distraction, a new woman, a louder life, an ego recharged through shallow winds. But none of it touches the place she reached. Because she didn't occupy his time, she occupied his soul. And nothing in the external world can distract a man from a soul wound, not for long. This is the paradox of the dark feminine. She doesn't give you answers. She becomes the question, and in doing so, she forces him to live in tension between what he pretends to be and what he truly is underneath. Carl Jung taught that the shadow contains everything we deny in ourselves: our fears, our longings, our rage, our shame. And when a woman dares to live in her full feminine polarity, light and dark, she activates this shadow in him, not to punish, but to reveal. It is no accident that these women are often accused of being too much, too intense, too mysterious, too cold, too hard to read. But the truth is, they are simply too awake to be manipulated by shallow praise or conditional affection. And that unsettles a man who only knows how to feel powerful when a woman is desperate for his presence. She is not desperate. She is discerning. She does not lean forward, she leans back, not in disinterest but in wisdom. She watches how he reacts to her silence, because silence is her language, and how a man responds to it tells her everything she needs to know. If he panics, she sees his unhealed abandonment. If he demands, she sees his need for control. If he disappears, she sees the depth he's afraid to swim in. And if he lingers in that silence, not to fix, but to feel, she knows he's ready to begin the deeper initiation. Because for her, love is not found in comfort, it is forged in consciousness. She has walked the path of isolation. She has faced her own inner chaos without needing a man to rescue her. She has sat in nights of aching detachment and found power in solitude. So she does not bond through trauma. She bonds through truth. She is not impressed by effort. She is moved by energy. He cannot fake presence with her. He cannot perform intimacy. He cannot seduce her shadow unless he has touched his own. And so he's left with a choice that most men never expect love to ask. Do I rise into my wholeness, or do I retreat back into performance? If he chooses the latter, she vanishes like smoke. No goodbye, no spectacle, just absence. And in that absence, he begins to finally hear the echoes of what she was trying to awaken all along. His own buried longing for truth, his own forgotten desire to be known, his own aching need to be seen beyond performance. She did not shame his shadow. She revealed it, and that is why he cannot forget her. Not because she said too much, but because she said nothing and still reached the deepest part of him. That is the secret of the dark feminine. She does not play games, she plays frequency. And if his spirit is not tuned to hers, the connection dissolves, not as punishment, but as protection. She protects her energy the way temples protect sacred fire. Not everyone is allowed to touch it. Not everyone is ready to hold it without destroying it. And in time, he may realize this. She wasn't withholding love. She was waiting to see if he would meet her in the dark, where true love begins. He begins to dream of her, not as she was, but as an archetype. The memory of her lingers like incense on the edge of his psyche. He doesn't dream of her face, he dreams of her energy, that calm defiance, that quiet magnetic gravity. It pulls at something primal inside him, the longing to be both destroyed and reborn in the presence of a woman who cannot be possessed. This is the fourth secret of the dark feminine. She is the death of his illusion, and every man must at some point watch his illusions die. Carl Jung wrote that, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." She is that reaction. She is alchemy wrapped in soft skin, poetry shaped like a storm. She doesn't come to soothe him, she comes to initiate him into truth, into maturity, into the painful beauty of self-awareness. He once thought love meant comfort. Now he begins to understand. It means clarity. Because she has shown him that affection without depth is addiction, and intimacy without vulnerability is performance. He cannot hide behind intellectual charm with her. He cannot manipulate her attention through distance or games. Every tactic that worked on other women collapses before her gaze. Because she doesn't seek approval, she seeks resonance. Her detachment isn't coldness, it's discernment. Her silence isn't rejection, it's reflection. Her mystery isn't performance, it's power restrained. She knows that desire, when controlled, becomes energy, and energy, when channeled, becomes influence. That's why he feels intoxicated by her presence. Not because she offers herself freely, but because she moves through the world as if she already has everything she needs. She doesn't speak of manifestation, she embodies it. She doesn't chase vibration, she is the vibration. And that terrifies him because deep down he senses. She is not responding to his ego, but to his evolution. He tries to rationalize it. He tells himself she was manipulative, aloof, hard to love. But when he's honest, he knows the truth. She didn't reject him. She exposed him. She showed him where he still hides behind pride, where he still clings to control. She mirrored every part of him that's afraid to surrender. And in doing so, she liberated herself. Because a dark feminine woman doesn't want to own a man. She wants him to own himself. She wants him to meet her as an equal in consciousness, not as a boy seeking motherly validation. That's what makes her dangerous. Not her beauty, not her body, but her wholeness. She has made peace with her own inner masculine. She doesn't need protection, but she honors it. She doesn't need to dominate, but she commands respect. She doesn't need to compete with other women because her presence alone rewrites the room. And when she loves, it's not out of need, it's out of overflow. Her love doesn't bind, it expands. It burns away illusion until only truth remains. And in that truth, she finds liberation not just for herself, but for the man brave enough to meet her there. Because this is her gift and her curse. Every man she touches either rises into his potential or runs back into the safety of his shadow, and she is fine either way. For she knows not everyone deserves access to the sacred. Not every man is ready to stand before a woman who reminds him of God. And yet, the rare few who do, never forget her. Because she was not a detour in their story. She was the initiation. There comes a moment, quiet, devastating, sacred, when he finally understands. It doesn't happen during the storm, but in the stillness that follows it, when he sits alone, stripped of ego and pretense, and realizes she was never trying to hurt him. She was trying to wake him. This is the final secret of the dark feminine. She is not a lover first. She is a mirror of evolution. And for those who can see her clearly, she becomes the catalyst for transformation itself. He begins to trace her silence back through every word she never said. Every pause that used to frustrate him now feels like scripture. Every glance he once misread as indifference now burns with the memory of truth. She was teaching him that the deepest connection is not built on possession, but on presence. Jung believed that within every man lives a hidden feminine, his anima, and within every woman a hidden masculine, the animus. They are not enemies but bridges. When she embodied her darkness, she was not acting against him. She was meeting him at the bridge between what is conscious and what is buried. And he, without knowing, was being invited to cross. Most men refuse. They seek soft light, not sacred fire. But he can no longer unsee what she revealed. He has touched the edge of his own shadow. He has glimpsed what lies beyond desire. Awakening. He remembers how she would not chase, how she could look into him and see the parts no one else dared to acknowledge, how she made him feel both terrified and alive, like standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing that falling might also mean flying. He once mistook her detachment for coldness. Now he knows it was discipline. It was the devotion of a woman who refused to lose herself again in someone else's emptiness. It was power reclaimed, energy contained, silence sharpened into sovereignty. The woman who walks in her dark feminine no longer seeks to be understood. She has transcended the need for validation, applause, or rescue. She has walked through rejection, loneliness, and longing, and realized none of it could touch her essence, because her worth was never up for negotiation. She no longer tries to heal men. She reveals them. She no longer tries to earn love. She embodies it. She no longer tries to fix what is broken. She holds it to the light until it either transforms or shatters. And when she finally lets go, it's not from bitterness, but from deep knowing. She understands that some connections exist not to last, but to awaken. Not to be owned, but to be honored. Not to promise forever, but to remind both souls of what they were born to remember. Because love, at its truest, is not about staying. It's about seeing. And she saw him. She saw through every mask, every defense, every boy hiding behind a man's voice. She saw the truth and loved him enough not to dilute it. And though he may never say it aloud, part of him will always whisper her name when the world goes quiet. Because she wasn't a chapter in his story, she was the mirror that revealed the story he was afraid to write. And as she walks away, her steps are slow, deliberate, sovereign. She does not look back. She does not explain. She doesn't need to, for the woman who has met her own darkness walks differently. Not as someone who seeks love, but as someone who is love. And in her silence, there is peace. In her mystery, there is power. In her solitude, there is the echo of every goddess who ever chose herself over illusion. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.